My name is Kristen. I'm the Director of Operations at GMI. I just want to welcome everybody to our roundtable on how to handle rejection by jobs or recruiters. We'll spend about 45 minutes discussing the topic, and as a reminder, this call will be recorded and I'll make it available on YouTube after. We're joined today by two repeat GMI mentors, Rohan and Stefanie, who will introduce themselves and share a bit about their journey. Then we're going to move into some questions that were submitted from our GMI mentees for this topic. If throughout the meeting you have any questions about rejection in the job market, please just feel free to type them and we can get to them at the end. Stefanie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Stefanie or Steph Jacobs, and I'm a principal technical architect, former chief technical architect at Microsoft. I'm based out of Atlanta, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions, learning from you, and hopefully give you some good, tangible information in this safe space.
Rohan?
Hey everyone, my name is Rohan Kulkarni. I am based out of the greater Chicago area. I'm a director of engineering at Expedia Group. Yeah, I'm here to share some personal experience from rejections and also give you some hopefully valuable piece of advice that can help you when applying for jobs.
Perfect. Thank you both for introducing yourselves. We can move into the questions. And the first question is pretty much the overarching question, but what have your experiences with rejection been when applying for jobs? Rohan, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think for me, I've experienced rejections at a couple of different levels. First, when I graduated with a bachelor's degree, and then second, when I graduated with my master's degree. I can share some more information about the latter because that is more relevant to this conversation. So I pursued my master's here in Chicago in computer science. And this was back in December of 2009, where it was not a great time to graduate because it was also recession. So jobs were hard to find, and also being on a student visa back in the day was difficult because you had certain amount of time to apply for a job and find a job and get that, right? So I just wanted to share like some data around how I navigated this without going into too much details. Between December 2009 and February 2010, I almost applied to 300 jobs and got 25-ish phone interviews, which includes the HR interviews and the interviews with the engineers and all of that, technical interviews. From 25, I went to get 10 on-site interviews, which is where you actually go into the company and give an in-person interview. And then from that, I got 3 job offers. But you can imagine the scale. You're like going from 300 to 3. It was pretty overwhelming for me to finally get something at hand, which was confirmed. So just like basically want to call that out here, that it's a big deal when it comes to applying for job and facing rejections. And we'll go more into details later.
Steph?
Yeah, I also have my fair share of rejections under my belt in my 30-year career, or almost 30-year career in IT, and mostly IT positions. I've had my fair share, and they ranged from putting a lot of effort into it and then not receiving any gratification back, i.e. have not even been invited to a job interview, all the way to I didn't even get a response to my application, and worse. So there are different types of rejections, and they typically made me feel differently depending on the situation in my life. But what they all have in common is that I took something and I learned from an aspect of them. And even if it was just a psychological aspect where you go through the different stages of coping with rejection, and that could be in my case, crying in the bathroom, all the way to stepping outside and kicking the tires off my car because I was angry, and then coming back in and being collected and being able to continue on and build myself up again in order to continue pursuing my life's goals, all the way to actually flying from Europe, where I used to live, to the United States, on a 3-day trip, being completely jet lagged, going through an interview process and then being rejected. So, there's a multitude of different experience, and depending on the time today, I'll be happy to share some more details on each one of those.
So you both sort of touched on it, but one of the questions we received is it normal to get a lot of job rejections when you're starting out? And if so, yeah, basically, is it normal? Steph, would you like to go again?
Yes, and in the beginning, when your CV or resume, depending on where you are in the world, is relatively short because you don't have the experience necessary for certain types of roles out there in the job market, it is a lot more difficult in the beginning to receive a lot of rejections and coping with that set, because everyone asks for experience, but nobody wants to provide you with an opportunity to create those experiences. So that's a bit of a vicious cycle. And as you are in that sort of early stage in career, it is all about you and your tenacity and your stubbornness almost in pursuing these and continue to pursuing those opportunities, and not letting that shake your self-value, your self-worth, your feelings of appropriateness for certain positions. And you just have to deal with the fact that the chances for you getting rejected because of the lack of experience is higher. However, that aspect is likely going to diminish as you're going through your career and as you're maturing in the business that you're in.
Rohan?
I think big plus one to what you shared over there. I would just like to add a little bit. I think when you're starting out, your options are typically limited to more like entry level roles because you don't have experience. And not all companies have entry level roles, right? Like some startup companies, for example, might only hire somebody with more experience because they want to accelerate and move fast, whereas some larger companies might want to invest in entry-level talent, and hence that is where you will find more opportunities. But then at the same time, there are also a lot of students who graduate at the same time as well, right? Like from universities, because those timelines are pretty set in the calendar year. So the chances of rejection become higher. So how do you stand out of all of that becomes really important. And that's where your resume plays a vital role.
Another question we received was, should someone respond to rejection notices? So if you receive an email or something that says that they're passing on you, should you respond? And if so, how do you respond to those types of things? Rohan, would you like to go first?
Sure. This is all speaking from personal experience. I would say yes, you should absolutely respond and ask for feedback on why your application was rejected. However, I would like to caution that 95% of companies would never respond back to you, or even if they do, they would not tell you why you were rejected due to confidentiality agreements, right? But it doesn't hurt to ask why. I think in my probably 300 applications now that I like remember, probably I got barely 1 or 2 responses back saying that there was not a good fit or the company priorities changed, and that was it. But generally, you wouldn't get any feedback on why you were rejected. I think one small like tip that worked for me was I just had a email template for rejections, right? And I just used that and send it out to every time I used to get rejection, so that I'm not crafting a new email every time. So it is just probably helpful to have that handy when you get that rejections to ask for feedback.
Steph?
I tend to agree with Rohan. So I think it is a cultural and also a personal value question that you should ask yourself. Is it common in your culture, where you are in the world? Is it common to respond to rejection notices? But also, do you feel in yourself whether that is a sign of respect? Do you want to give that respect to the recruiter that at least have taken the time to inform you that you haven't been selected, and potentially even inform you on why you haven't been selected? And this is part of my culture in Europe, where I'm originally from, I would definitely send a rejection notice response, because I feel that is appropriate. It is respectful. I never burn bridges. Maybe next time it works out. So I want to be in good graces with that organization, and also in a very favorable mindset as recruiters think of me and think of the experience that they had with me as an applicant to a job role. So I would certainly do that, but it may not be appropriate everywhere. And here I would encourage you to think about what that means for you, and trust your own gut feel. It may be appropriate for some, it may not be appropriate for others, and go with the flow and just think about the values, your own values, as well as the cultural values around you.
Rohan, you had just mentioned that you had sort of a template. Do you recall sort of what you said in that when you emailed back those people?
Yeah, it was mostly like appreciating them getting back to me with a yes or no, because sometimes even getting that is difficult. You have to follow up. Hey, what's the outcome of the interview, right? So you should always start with an appreciation that the company is taking the time to follow up with you in the mix of, I don't know, thousands of candidates applying for the role, right? So I think always start on that positive note, and then basically you just ask that, hey, can I get some quick feedback on where I could improve, so that when I'm applying to this company next time, I could keep those things in mind, right? Just simply that. It's not like anything fancy. Just a template like that could be very valuable. And again, it could be the same for all the companies from where you get rejection, because there's nothing like fundamentally different from company A to B from that perspective.
And if I may add something
Go for it.
here as well, if you do decide to respond to the rejection notice, also think about your own brand. How do you want to come across? And I can only, again, speak about myself. I don't necessarily have a template, because I feel these things are not always, but in some cases, so personal that I don't want to necessarily use a specifically worded letter every single time. But for example, I would start my letters or my emails with dear person name, rather than hi or hello. And this is just, again, my personal brand, and the way that I make things a little bit more fine-tuned and specific to a person, to a recruiter, to an organization, to a job role that I've been applying to. And again, the same might be in your signature field, right? Something that screams, this is Steph, or this is you. And again, this is becoming part of your brand. So practice it even in small things like rejection notices.
Perfect. Thank you both. The biggest question I think that we received is, how do you cope with rejection and then still manage to stay motivated? Steph, would you like to go first?
Yeah, certainly. So coping with rejection and staying motivated are actually two very different things. The coping mechanism is really quite personal, and we all have our own way to overcome hardship, whether that is a rejection, whether that is any kind of personal circumstance that puts us on the back foot. And I think that the most important thing is that you permit yourself to grieve for whatever the negativity is that you're facing, whether that's the rejection notice or anything else. Allow yourself to feel disappointed, allow yourself to be sad, but then also try and not dwell on it. shift your focus back to the job search and the goals and the focus that you had in mind when you started applying for these types of roles. And that's where the motivation comes in. Find something that motivates you. Why did you apply for this job? And this is when you then can evaluate how you got there. Did you come at this from a position of strength? Did you come at this from a position of opportunity? Or did you come at this from a position of weakness? And I want to give you an example. Many years ago, when I was relatively early still in my career, I applied for a job role at an organization because I felt I needed to leave my previous role. I was not happy there. I didn't enjoy the work anymore. So I came and I was kind of desperate to move on. This is a classic example of going to a new role from weakness. And it shows when you go to interviews, when you are in that moment where you are asked, hey, you know what made you leave old company? And you don't really have something tangible other than I didn't enjoy what I was doing. And I got rejected. And the reason I got rejected was you seemed overqualified, which is a bit of a non-answer as far as I'm concerned, right? So again, I came at this from a position of weakness. I didn't build up the foundation of opportunity and the foundation of strength. And again, this is very subjective and it might look different to each and every one of you, but think about this. Do not be desperate. Find out what you can do to give yourself a strong foundation where actually you don't need that job. You really want it, but you don't need it. And that gives you confidence, that gives you a way to regain motivation as you're rebuilding yourself. And it makes an overall easier experience dealing with that rejection at first, but because you don't really need that. You don't need it, you wanted it, you didn't need it. So again, this is more of a sort of a psychological self confidence kind of answer, but it is so important to think about it in those terms and not be dwelling on it for too long, but again, allow yourself to be disappointed, go to the bathroom and cry if that's your thing, go and kick the tires off your car if that's your thing, go outside for a walk, hug your dog, right? So think about all of those things that you might do when you're sad, when you're disappointed. Don't neglect yourself, don't swallow it down. But once you do come out of it, focus on that motivation again and give yourself the best preamble to be successful at the next job application.
Rohan? You're muted, Rohan.
Sorry. I would say reframe rejection and use it as a feedback mechanism rather than thinking about it as a failure, because it is not always necessary a failure, right? Like if you're getting rejected. I think the most important thing is to think about what you learned from the rejection and how you can use it to your advantage, right? You need to celebrate even small successes that come out of rejection. So I'll give you a personal example, right? Like if actually, yeah, I've faced this as well, but this could be used in any situation, right? If you're giving an interview for a company, and if in your last interview you went to the final round of interviews, which has never happened before, right? Consider that as a small win, right? Because you want to keep that momentum going, you want to keep that alive, rather than waiting for big successes to always feel good, right? So celebrate these small successes, even if you're getting rejected at the final stage. It's very important to remind yourself of the goal, celebrate these successes, and use that to stay motivated going forward.
So along the lines of that, it's how do you use the rejection to your advantage? And Rohan, I feel like you started to point out this as like using it as feedback, but you have more for that?
Yeah, so essentially you could be doing a retrospective on the rejection itself, right? And ask yourself why it happened after you got the rejection notice. I think after you get a few of these, you should be able to figure out automatically like why I'm getting rejected to a large extent, right? I think I see rejection as like sort of how every coin has two sides, right? On one side, it's you, how good your resume is, and how you prepare for the interview and how you present at the interview. But on the other side, it's the company, right? So the company as a role, the role might not be well fit for your qualifications, as Steph was calling out earlier, or the company might suddenly go into a hiring freeze, which has nothing to do with your qualification, or the company might find an internal candidate, and they'll always prefer an internal candidate over an external candidate to fill that role, right? So it depends on why you are getting. It's really important to do that retrospective to understand why you're getting rejected, right? And every rejection can also help you understand what in your interview preparation is working versus what is not working. So use it to refine your like approach for interview prep. A personal example that comes to mind here is when I was giving interviews back in 2009. After each interview, I used to immediately write down questions that were asked in the interview, right? The behavioral questions, the technical questions, because I used that as a prep guide to prepare for the next interview in case I got rejected. And what I realized after doing this is typically companies have a certain pattern of questions that they'll ask both for technical and behavioral. Sometimes the question might be tweaked and asked differently, but your response could stay the same, right? So I have benefited from this personally a lot, and my question bank like grew over time as I got more rejections. But I think that was a good like guide I used to apply for like the next interview and so on. So over time, I became rejection resistant through that.
Steph?
You should bottle that one up, Rohan. I would love to have some rejection resilience. Yeah, as Rohan said, right, a rejection can be a very powerful tool for growth. So that is kind of the advantage that you can take from every rejection that you might receive throughout your career. Asking for feedback is great, and hopefully in many cases you will receive some indication on where you could improve in order to maybe successful in the future. However, what do you do if you do not get feedback or they can't share feedback with you due to confidentiality reasons or otherwise? That's when you can ask yourself during the interview, during the screening that you had, was there a particular question that made you uncomfortable? Did you identify something yourself where maybe there is an opportunity for growth? Maybe there is a way where you can dig deeper in terms of the technology or the methodology that they were asking for, or is there a way of getting maybe experience in that particular field that made you uncomfortable as through an internship, through some volunteering work or anything like that? So this is really where I analyze that interview, that screen directly, and identify where you felt uncomfortable, where you felt out of your depth, where you maybe started blabbing a little bit because you were nervous, right? So find those spots and hook on to those. Go after them with enthusiasm, go after them and maybe discuss them with your mentor if you have one. Find yourself a mentor. Discuss it with your friends and family, get an outside perspective in, and use all of those data points to help you improve. Feel not as uncomfortable next time when this sort of question or that sort of topic comes up that instilled that feeling in you in the first place. And really view each rejection as an opportunity to grow and enhance those skills that you may have been lacking, that you may have been uncomfortable, and realize that oftentimes, as Rohan mentioned, it's not you, it's them. because they had a job freeze, they had a hiring freeze, they had an internal candidate. It might be something completely different. They had a reorganization, right? So it could be just not you at all. So again, do not let that diminish your sense of value, your sense of self-worth.
Thank you. You both sort of touched on this already, but not how to handle it. So when you apply for a job and you don't hear back, what are your methods? Like, and this is more so at this stage, if you just submit an application, do you follow up, or what do you do when you don't hear? And if you follow up, when would you suggest doing that? Steph?
I think, again, it depends on your culture, what's appropriate, the type of role that you are responding to. However, I feel that possibly a week, maybe 2 weeks is certainly an appropriate amount of time to start following up. I would frame it as a polite inquiry about the status of the application. Maybe it's just hanging in some sort of system, or they're waiting for some other indications or different data points before they can make a decision. So give them the opportunity to respond to your firm, but yet a very polite inquiry. If you have had an actual interview, not just an application, but an actual interview, I would definitely go back within a week. Express that you're still interested in this particular position and ask if there are any updates on the hiring process. This is probably where I would go and create a template, again, using my own personal brand, depending on how you want to phrase that and how you want to appear to those recruiters. But do not wait too long. If you've had an interview, most organizations, they give you an answer within 3 to 5 days. I know my organization has that. Other very big IT organizations have that in the field. So if you haven't heard anything within a week, go and ask and inquire, just to make sure that you're still in the run and that you have not missed anything, or that they're not missing any kind of information that's potentially vital for you to move on with the application going forward.
Rohan?
I generally agree with the timelines that Steph called out there. To the first part of the question, if you've just submitted an application and if you don't hear it, like, how do you follow up? I think a little caveat there is, when you submit applications, the responses you get are very generic responses, and they are from do not reply email addresses. So maybe sometimes you don't know who to follow up with as well, right? Because you don't have a genuine email address. What do you do at that point? My philosophy is to look at recruiters on LinkedIn who work in that company, connect with them, and try to get a response through that lens. And that has worked many times, that has not worked many times. I've had both experiences. But since you do not have a specific email address of a recruiter or a hiring manager at that early stage, how do you respond back, right? Or how do you ask for a follow-up? And that's where LinkedIn comes into play a lot. And I think GMI does a very good job of having a particular session on LinkedIn and how to make connections on LinkedIn and grow your network. And this is one area where it becomes very valuable to connect with the recruiters to the company you're applying to. I think for the other part, which is when you're giving like an in-person interview, typically that is one of the questions that I will ask the HR person in that interview, or the hiring manager, when should I expect a follow-up, so that I have a tentative timeline on when I should follow up if I don't get a response. Companies generally are pretty proactive in saying that you should expect to hear back within a couple of days. But if they're not explicitly telling you, I think you have a good follow-up question there at the end of your interview to ask, right? When should I expect to hear back?
Perfect. So those were the original submitted questions, but I see that we have received 3 in the chat. One of them is, when you're rejected by a certain organization or company, is it good to request for a brief explanation why they rejected you, so that you can be prepared ahead of time? And we sort of touched on this already, but is there anything else either of you would like to add? Okay. The next question is, looking at the explanation, is it okay to lower yourself in order to get a certain job? I think this goes back to Steph, you had made a comment that if you're told that you're overqualified, I would assume this is sort of what he is getting at. What are your thoughts on that, Steph?
Again, I think this is a very cultural, diverse question here. I personally would say, coming from my experience, which is European as well as North American, do not ever lower yourself. Be proud of who you are. And if someone tells you that you're overqualified, then that just means that they're either not willing to pay you what you're worth or they just don't know why, but they wanted to give it to someone else and they don't have a better explanation for you. I personally think that an answer like you're overqualified is a non-answer. It is one of those things that don't mean anything. Do not lower yourself. Hold your head high. Be proud of who you are. And always be true to yourself. Respect yourself first and foremost, and then respect the organization. This is a two-way street. You should never lower yourself. You should never lower your standards or your expectations just because you might be coming from a place of weakness or non-opportunity. Rather work on that and create that opportunity, create that foundation of strength before you continue applying for roles at these types of organizations.
Rohan?
I think I generally all agree with what you said, Steph, there. The only one time where I would think about lowering myself is, for example, if there's a dream company I'm applying to, and their role is a role or level lower than what I have today, and I desperately want to get into that company, that's the only time I would think about even like lowering myself. But other than that, I would always look to be at the same level or above when applying for my next job, pretty much.
The last question that was submitted is it good to have volunteership job to revamp your CV before applying for a big job opportunity? Does volunteering count? Rohan?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, at least in the tech world, I'm assuming when you're saying volunteering, it is referring to like you're voluntary doing some technical projects or something around those lines. And if it is, then that definitely counts, because nowadays, at least, like when I'm hiring for somebody for a technical role, and if there's a GitHub repo link on their resume, I would actually go and see what sort of code this person has written, what are they passionate about, what are their passion projects called out there, right? And not to use that as a mechanism to say, no, I'm not going to interview the person, but just to get to know this person a little bit more, because typically these things do not always get reflected on the resume. But looking at someone's code, you can also learn a lot more about the person. So I think if you're doing technical projects on the side, you should definitely call those out in your resume or CV.
Steph?
And I completely agree with what Rohan said. I would also say it doesn't have to be necessarily just technical side hustles that you've got going on. I had one of my mentees, she volunteered at her church and she did a lot of bookkeeping and housekeeping and management of finances and paperwork and that sort of stuff. I think these types of things should also be included as volunteer work. They show that you have a dedication to a cause. They show that you have an attention to detail. And all of those kind of things can be very beneficial to any type of role that you're applying to. So think about not just necessarily technical jobs, also think about anything else that might look mundane, that may not be, groundbreaking in terms of the work that you actually do. Everything counts and everything gives you experience, and everything will ultimately benefit you in having a stronger, better start to your new career.
Thank you. And we actually just got one more question. How would you handle being told that technically you're not qualified enough or exceptional enough? How do you go about improving yourself from that? Steph?
Look, the first part, I'm going to get to that in a moment, but if someone tells me you're not exceptional enough, I probably would deflect with humor here, and I would probably laugh and say, that's a good one. I think I'm very exceptional, right? So I think that's one of those things where you can let your personality shine through and respond in kind, right? So this is not something that I would expect you to hear during a professional interview. Nobody will tell you that you're not exceptional enough. What they might tell you, though, is that you don't have the technical qualifications that they're looking for. And this is a good opportunity for you where you could say, are you looking for specific certification? Is there a course that I can take, right? Is there a certification that I can earn from a renowned company, AWS, Microsoft has them. There's a lot of Google has a ton of free ones out there as well that you can utilize to improve on your technical skills or otherwise on your skill set. So ask for, are you looking for this specific exam? Are you looking for this specific type of experience? And if it's not a certification, but rather an experience question, maybe find out from your network. That could be your LinkedIn network, that could be your personal network, that could be a social network with a professional lens put through to see, hey, is there anyone out there who can give me that experience? Is there someone who would be able to let me shadow them as they're performing those tasks that are being requested? Speak to your mentor about this. They might have a really good idea on how you can obtain the skills that you've been rejected for, and work with them to build almost a roadmap on how you can get to that, leveraging volunteer work, leveraging certifications, and potentially shadowing others as they're performing this role. Going forward, so you have a better opportunity in the future to be successful for that type of role. But don't let anyone tell you that you're not exceptional, because you are.
Rohan?
Yeah, completely agree. I would just like to add that basically over time, as you get more experience through this process, you yourself will know that whether you're qualified or not for a certain job before even you apply for it, right? Because if the job has expectations and responsibilities laid out, and you know that you don't possess them, I think you will refrain from probably applying to them at some point, right? Because the skill sets clearly don't match. You do not have that skill set, and that is one of the required skill sets as well. So I think you would also learn about this process yourself and improve yourself and make sure that you're targeting the right goals and jobs for your next move there.
Thank you both. We're coming up. Okay, one last question. Between volunteering, internships, and apprenticeships, which one gave points when applying for a job? I guess, do you find any of those more enticing on a resume is how I would take that question. Rohan?
I would say internships. If I'm to stack rank that really, it would be internships, apprenticeship, and volunteering. I would stack rank it that way. Because internships is where you're actually getting that real world experience of working in an organization, working with people, working on good projects, and delivering code out there in front of people, right? So I think I would rank definitely internships higher, and then probably volunteering and apprenticeship maybe similar levels, sort of.
Steph?
Where I come from, internship and apprenticeship are synonymous. So you have multi-year internships, you've got multi-year apprenticeships. So I can't really make a distinction between those two. But I agree, they're probably from a professional point of view on the top of the list. And then the volunteering. On a more personal note, I love people who volunteer because they are the ones that tend to go the extra mile. So depending on who or what type of role that you're applying to, volunteering might actually be the one that stands out because it shows you there's no certification, there is no reimbursement, no remuneration. It's purely voluntary. You are giving your time and you get absolutely nothing in return. And this is really a powerful thing. So again, depending on the role that you are applying for, volunteering might actually be on the top of the list. But for most opportunities, especially when we're looking at the IT, when we're looking at software, if we're looking at the market, the digital market out there, I think internships and apprenticeships are seen as the more crucial portion on your CV or on your resume.
Thank
I
you.
would just like to add one quick thing is
Mhm.
not everybody gets internship or apprenticeship, right? That doesn't mean you should just wait and not do anything until you find one. That's where the volunteership or volunteering comes into play a lot, right? And that's where if you're just sitting down and not doing anything and don't have an internship, I think you should invest time in building these projects on the side, which go on your GitHub repo, or if it's non-technical, you do that volunteering thing and then put that on your resume, right? Like just don't sit idle at that moment is what I would call it.
Perfect. So that's sort of the end of our time. But before we fully wrap up, I just wanted to ask if the both of you could share like some parting wisdom on how to handle rejection or any other final thoughts that you would like to share. Rohan?
Uh, just super quick, I would say patience is key. I have learned from this. I think rejections, everybody faces that at some point in their life in some fashion. Just staying patient, like seeing light at the end of the tunnel, using rejections to your advantage, understanding from rejections, and then growing from that. Staying optimistic and focused eventually on achieving your goal is what I would say is the most important.
Steph?
And I totally agree with what Rohan said. I would add that being tenacious, being enthusiastic about where you want to go, and not giving up hope are crucial. Again, a rejection does not or should not diminish your sense of self-worth, of self-value. It's got oftentimes nothing to do with you. Use the bits that you learned from the rejection, maybe through feedback, maybe through analyzing yourself where you felt uncomfortable to get the idea of where you could improve. Use that as a stepping stone to make those improvements. Work with your mentor, work with the Global Mentorship Initiative or GMI. There are so many resources at your disposal. You're not alone. We're all here to help you. There are forums, there are obviously those mentorship sessions that we conduct with you. We're here to help. Please leverage us, leverage other resources, leverage knowledge-based articles, FAQs. There's so much stuff out there. And if you do feel a little bit small and neglected and maybe a bit sad and disappointed, let yourself feel that way. And then you pick yourself up and then you go at it again with tenacity, with happiness, with enthusiasm, with positivity, and it will come back to you. It will come back to you, and you're not alone.
Thank you so much, the both of you, for sharing your time. Thank you, everybody else, for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.